Go ahead and get started. So I'd like to welcome everyone for being out here and taking time from your evenings to be part of this. And go ahead and turn it over to the co-chairs to see if they have any opening remarks. And go from there.
Okay. Thanks for coming out tonight. And I want to thank everyone that came over a little early today, and really give a round of applause to everyone that worked on the GAG plant and the township, MDEQ, everyone that worked on this. This was quite an event to get this completed, and those that went in and saw the GAG plant, it's quite an awesome thing. So, and once again, thanks to the township and working together on that. So as we move forward. And then also want to introduce Mr. Dan Medina on some of the, he's now with the BRAC section. Dan had been in the active side as well, and with a lot of the installations like Pease and Reese, you have two coordinators now. So,
Nice meeting you. Good. Thanks, man.
and I'll turn it over to Arnie at this time.
Thank you. I'd like to again thank the community RAB members, the 15 of us that are here, and for their efforts in reviewing some of these reports. It's kind of dry reading pretty much, but they also, when we had a work session a few weeks ago, they were able to give me some priorities on updates and things like that. So please keep talking to them. And we want to expand that so that we're getting your view of what you're hearing here or what you're not hearing. So help us to work through them. Also want to thank the NOW group. They're the ones that have been really getting the community and residents, capturing the good stories, not so good stories also, but the energy and engagement has been phenomenal over the last 9 months. So I want to thank them because it helps the RAB group too.
And this time I'd like to, before we introduce the RAB members, I'd like to recognize the presence of, we have a state representative, Sue Allure. She's here with us today, and Mr. Jake Bennett, he's out of Mr. Dan Kilby's office. And anybody else here with us today that we could recognize?
Art. Who's here from MPART?
MPART director? Oh, I'm sorry. And Mr. Scott Dean, the communications director for the is the MD&Q?
Good.
Yep, right there. Okay. Thank you. And so we'll go ahead and go around the table, and the RAB members, please introduce yourselves.
Sure. My name is Tim Cummings. I am the trustee on the Oscoda Township Board of Trustees. I'm also the Township RAB member representative.
I'm Joe Maxwell. I'm a township, or just a citizen member and chairman of the Downtown Development Authority in Oscoda.
Avi Musa, a toxicologist with Michigan Department of Health and Human Service, and I'm replacing Christina Bush as a RAB member.
I'm Bob Delaney, and I'm with the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, and I'm the project manager that works directly with the Air Force.
Joe Plunky, community representative.
Bill Gaines, community representative in Oscoda Area School Board trustee.
Chuck LaShawn, District Health Department number 2 representative.
Tony Martolio, District Ranger for the Huron Shores office here in Oscoda for the Huron-Manistee National Forest.
Matt Mars, Air Force BRAC.
Arnie LaRich, co-chair of the community RAB Oscoda resident.
Jeff Moss, Asabo Township trustee.
Hi, I'm Mike Munson. I'm the airport board member for the Oscoda Wurtsmith Airport Authority.
Robert Tazier, I am a community member.
Daniel Stock, alternate community member, sitting in for Ryan Mertz.
My name is Jerry Schmidt. I'm an attorney. I'm a community member.
Kathy Wooster Barth. I'm a Oscoda resident and one of the leaders of the Now Need Our Water group.
So,
I'm Matt Hegwood, community member.
Why is Matt over there?
He doesn't have a seat at the table.
It was a mistake. I'll take blame for that.
I'm going to sit with Matt.
I'm going to sit with Bob.
Any other RAB members or alternates?
Is it Irene? Can you stand up?
Irene Dunn, alternate community member. Catherine Larry, alternate community member.
Okay.
Daniel Connor, alternate community member.
Okay. All righty, well, thank you. You guys already introduced myself. So next is, let's see, the ground. We're going to go ahead and, just a reminder, during the end of the RAB meeting, we always have a public comment time. So if anybody wants to do that, there's a sign-in sheet in the back. There's also a sheet where if you don't feel like you want to do it here in public, you can write that, give those to us, and we will have those answered for you. So next is quickly go over the ground rules. And the RAB want to go ahead and read over those once more. We can do so. We'll go ahead and if you want to start, sir.
Sure. Number 1, respect one another and maintain an atmosphere of open dialogue and exchange of ideas.
Use our time together efficiently, wisely, and respectfully.
Speak clearly and succinctly, one person at a time. Avoid interrupting others.
Better follow that one. Listen and remain open to differing points of view.
Share information early, openly, and honestly.
Maintain a propensity for progress. Prepare, discuss, document, and move forward.
And number 7, accurately and objectively relay to others the discussions that occur at board meetings.
All righty. We're going to go ahead and move on to the updates. Now, just a quick note: the presentation that the RAB members have, it's a little different from what you're going to see up here. We had some a lot of last-minute things that happened, especially today. Some good stuff. So it's going to look a little different, but we're going to go ahead and cover it here today. So, I want to start with the township.
Yeah, thank you very much. So Mr. Mars reached out to us yesterday, Monday afternoon, and the Oscoda Township Board met today at 3:30 to discuss an agreement that we have with the Air Force. The problem is that we've been having back and forth in negotiations, and so we had a last-minute request to start the discharge prior to the signed agreement. Mr. Weed, are you in the house? Please, why don't you go to the podium and you can talk about some of the points that were covered in this meeting that we just completed today at 3:30.
Yeah, so over the last 9 months, we've been in negotiations with the Air Force on facilitating the agreements needed in order to get the GAC plant operational as far as a land regarding the land agreements, not the plant itself. And as of 3:25 today, the Air Force brought forward the documents, and the township approved all of that. So as far as the township is concerned, the Air Force is green-lighted to discharge into our stormwater sewer system. It was quite a cumbersome task, but I appreciate the efforts that you and I put into it to make that work. So thank you.
Thank you. And I just have one last question. I want to know if this approach that we're taking today restores the opportunity for representatives of the agencies to speak at the beginning of these meetings.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the progress.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. On the heels of that, I'll lead on in, and I can't say enough about thank you to the township working together. And we met with Mr. Weed the other day, and one of the things moving forward, both Dan Medina and myself will be meeting with Mr. Weed each time we come up here. And I think that will help things too, to work a lot closer with the township. So that's something that we need to do, and we will ensure that we start doing.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, but once again, thanks to everyone for getting the GAC plant, and it was awesome. And like I said, back when we walked over there the last time we had snow that deep, and who would have thunk it? But it's all good now. And you saw the size of the building, so there's a lot of room for future expansion needs and different treatment technologies. And one of the things, the plant will be turned on tomorrow, and they'll start taking discharge from the Arrow Street plant. It will be coming in there, and they'll be working with that, and then be working with Tarek and his group, their Water Resources Division, DEQ, making sure that we get the sampling and analysis plan set up and get this set the way it should be as we move forward. So, and once again, appreciate everything with the Water Resources Division throughout this whole process. So, that was something that we should take as a big positive, because the RAB, it all came together and it's been good. So, and we need to sort of just work from that and keep working together. So, thanks everyone.
Matt, you said you were starting with benzene. Does that mean Arrow Street?
No, we're starting with Arrow.
Benzene then is going to follow?
Yes. We just do not have the pipelines put in on that because there's been the holdup on getting the easements. But we will take the Arrow, which I think is around 224 gallons a minute, will be going through the system. And then as soon as we can feasibly get the benzene tied in, we'll start doing that. And then in 19, we'll be looking at, the Mission Street and getting that tied in. So, and that sort of brings up, even though it's not on the list, this morning we met with MDEQ and appreciate the time, but one of the things we talked about is the follow-on performance-based contract, PBR as we call them. And we'll be working closely with Bob as we move into this next contract that we'll be putting together with award in 2020. So, and we'll be meeting with Bob again in September. So already going down through site by site and make sure we're all in agreement on the things that we'll include as tasks in that next task order. So, and that makes all the success I've seen in the past. The closer you work with your regulators, it's a partnership. So just like getting the benzene plant in that Arrow tied. So, and I'll let you move on to DEQ.
Okay.
DEQ. All right. I'll take the first two bullets, and then Mike Jury will take the next two bullets. And I do want to welcome Dan Medina to the team. I've worked with him in the past on technical issues on a technical work group at the national level, and he's going to bring a lot of great experience to the Air Force's program here. As far as first bullet there is a capture zone report. Many of you probably don't know what that's about. What MDEQ did, well, RRD, was we wanted to try and answer the question of whether the veterans and the people that worked on the base in the past had potentially drank PFAS contaminated water. And I'll talk a little bit more when I get into my my talk a little bit later, my technical talk, where we have a map up so you can see somewhat of what we did. But we went back and we found where the municipal water systems, the wells had been located. We compared those to where the plumes are today. We couldn't go back and look at what they were like in the past because nobody sampled for them. And then we ran our computer models to see if the water going into those wells would come from areas that we know are contaminated today. So the answer is yes. Every well that pumped in the past after the introduction of PFAS at the site could have been taking in PFAS. We don't know what day that started with anyone. The other thing to understand, this is not like a dose determination. Like if you lived on the base, we can't tell you what the concentrations were you drank, how much you drank. It's not like I can tell you what's in that pill bottle and what's going to happen when you take a pill, how much you're going to get. We don't know that. It's way too complicated to figure out. But anyway, it's a yes or no. Did you drink contaminated water or not? So that report has come out today. It will be posted at the website, the MPART website, pretty quick. It was sent up today to do that, and I just checked, it wasn't on there yet. So that report, I know some have, especially the veterans, have been waiting for that report to get out, and so it was posted today and sent out to people who had requested it in the past. And then the second thing, the MDQ plume bounding drilling work, that has been completed. And what that was about was that people kept asking us to sample the residential well. And it kept getting farther and farther from the base, and one could understand, these plumes are pretty huge, so people would keep asking us. Well, we determined based on our knowledge of hydrogeology and things like that that well would be way out of the range, but the people didn't feel comfortable with that. Just well, we scientists say it's not there, so you should be happy. So my management told me to go out and bound those plumes, go out and drill enough wells out there and sample enough water so that we would know how big the plumes are, and we could say yes, you're within the plumes, or no, you are not within the plumes. So we've just finished the work out in the field. We still have to sample some of those wells before we can put out a final report, but we will be able to give people a better handle on where they are in relationship to the plumes coming from the base. One thing to note is that as we moved away from the base, we ran into other much smaller plumes, but they are obviously coming from other sources. So you may not be getting hit by the plume from the base, but you might be getting water from some other smaller plume. Those have not been nearly as concentrated. So I'm taking a little too much time. Turn it over to Mike for the next two.
Bob, was that state, when you say we, was that you and the state MDEQ, or you contracted as Air Force doing it? So
no, it's purely MDEQ.
It's a state thing.
Right.
Okay,
Air Force has the same responsibility to do this, but that was looking like it was going to be out a couple years, and my management did not want to wait until they would be geared up.
Okay.
It was state, your state tax dollars.
Got it.
So, Bob, one question. So are you putting in new test wells, or are you testing existing wells, or both?
Yeah, it's been a three-phase effort on our part. So the last of the wells went in this last month, finished putting them in. And so my team is out sampling right now. They will be sampling those wells. I think the plan was to sample all the wells we have put in at once, so we get one snapshot of what's going on to see how far out are those plumes. But yeah, it was just all the monitoring wells we installed, not residential.
So you're not doing residential wells?
Oh, we're still doing residential wells, but that's the basis of that is more health concerns and where they are in relation to, could the levels go up and down?
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, it's a more risk-based issue.
I just wondered if you were.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So when you distinguish that, there were 7 wells that we couldn't do last year due to the weather and permitting issues. So is that included in the bounding?
Yes.
Drilling that plus whatever else your team came up with to determine how far out it's gone?
Yeah.
How many wells did you do to complete this study?
I don't know.
11.
How many?
11.
This time around?
Yes.
Yeah, 11 this time around. We added some more on this.
So you added 4 more to the 7 that needed to be done?
Yeah, well, the ones that we hadn't finished.
So there were 7 that weren't finished.
Right, so then we did 11 to answer some more questions. And then I don't know, there's 20 to 30 or something like that. There's a bunch of them out there now. They just come ask me for money. I don't count the welders.
So you're the guy we got to come to now. So you're the guy with the book.
Well,
okay.
I know who to go ask.
Oh,
that's the key.
You know the guy. All right.
Okay, next.
Is this here, or do you need me at the podium?
Is that fine, or does it need to be at the podium?
Yes.
For the audio, probably the podium, sir.
Okay, great, thank you. Hi, I'm Mike Jury. I'm from the DEQ. I'm out of the Bay City District Office, and Iosco County is part of our district, and so I work with Bob. Bob is working with the base area, and I do a lot of the work that is off the base. So the 2 bullet points I'm going to cover are foam recovery efforts. The form that you can use to report foam incidents is on the internet, and that has made it on our website. It does work. I've gotten a couple reports so far on foam on Van Etten Lake. It is very important for me to know when you see foam. We are certainly trying to figure out what causes a foam event. So pretty simple, we would think that if we get winds of a certain speed, we get wave action of a certain kind, that'll generate foam. And that may be true. One of the other items that we also need to know is how long is that foam lasting? Does it last an hour? Does it last 2 hours? Does it last a day? Does the wind move it? Do the waves move it? So there's a lot of things that are really helpful for us. You have the ability to attach photos to that. That's also really helpful to us. So unfortunately, Bob and I can't be here 24/7. We certainly wish we could be, but we can't. So we are really hoping that you, the residents around here that are extremely concerned about this, can help us out, make foam reports, let us know what you see, let us know how long it lasts, where is it at. So those are things that are be very vital for us to try to figure out what's going on with the foam. So any of you that have the ability, you see the foam, please report it. So you might say, well, there's only a little bit of foam at my home, or there's only a little bit of foam at the beach. It doesn't matter. I don't care. Please let me know. I can't help you without knowing how much it goes and where does it go and how much there is. So please, any report is gladly accepted. It helps me out figuring out with weather patterns and other things that are going on your lake for me to know what's going on. Oscoda Public Schools, is there somebody on the RAB that is on the school board? Would you like to cover that? I think that coming from the school actually is probably a better thing to talk about, and this would be on your water hookup, which is going to happen very soon.
Well, we had hoped to be completed prior to school start. We let the contract with every hope of that happening. There was a problem, I think, with the meter pit. They had to have a custom meter pit to put hardware in. They have now received that, and we're currently looking for an installation mid-month. It's not yet clear whether we're going to lose a day's school to cut over or not. We hope not. You know, we last year had to have a waiver for missing school days, so that's really a critical thing. But that's how we stand right now. They're in progress. A lot of the lines have been put in, but the meter pit right now is one of the last things on the list.
So we should all be very thankful that the school took the steps to hook up to municipal water. And also, I congratulate the school. One of the things that the school district also did is, if I'm not mistaken, you put in new drinking fountains, and those drinking fountains have filters put on the drinking fountains themselves, so that water that is there for students and teachers is also filtered to help take out PFAS materials in that water. So that is a really big step, and my congratulations to the school board and the superintendent for taking that extra step, protecting the public there at the school. So we, the DEQ, and also the Department of Local Health and DHHS, and also Senator Stamas's office, along with the USDA, have all been working to help the school district out to make the switch over. So there's a lot of thanks to go around to talk about when that comes about. I believe you also may be having some type of a ceremony when you do the switch?
I'm not aware of that. I do appreciate your mentioning when we voted to change over, we did not have funding in sight. The Department of Agriculture, as I understand, is in the process of coming up with a grant to partially fund it, and I think the remainder of the funding is going to come from the state. So it appears that it's not going to come out of our per pupil budget, so we aren't having to pay a teacher to get water.
Right, so that is the goal, to make sure that the school system stays whole. So hopefully that will happen in September, that the switch will happen, and that the school district will then be on municipal water. So I think that's really a good news story there. And just to recap on the foam, please help me help you by making foam reports. And thank you very much for your time.
Mike, how many times have you collected foam on Van Etten Lake since you've brought up the conversation and put the process in place?
We have not yet. We haven't had an event that has been reported to me that is a big enough event to make that happen. So one of the things that we still are well, I don't want you to have an event that is requiring a pickup. So,
but you received forms?
I have received forms, and so some of the photos I've received, you might have perhaps about 10 foot. My look at trying to guess what the length is, maybe about a 10-footer by about a foot high by maybe a foot wide.
Not enough?
No, not really. Now, there may have been reports. I've been out of the area for about 3 days. I was on a emergency practice drill down in Monroe County, so down by the Ohio border, so I wasn't available. So if there was a report of a significant incident, then I missed it because I was just not available.
Yeah.
So, but as I said, please, 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 if you have a foam issue, please let us know. You can either call or you can use the form, whichever. I really would appreciate it because it will help me try to figure out what's going on with that. As far as foam sampling, we do have a crew up in the area for the next couple weeks. If there is a foam, enough foam, they will try to sample foam on Van Etten Lake to get us another set of analytical results so that we can see if there's any changes in the foam structure. By that, is there more PFOA, more PFOS? Is there a change in how the types of PFAS chemicals in the foam change seasonally? So those are things that are helpful for us to know also. So we do have a team that is working in the area.
Mike, I'd like to add on that list of thanks, Congressman Kildee for the hookup for the school.
Well, thank you very much, because that's very good. Actually, and also we should include Senator Stabenow also, who was very gracious in trying to help get this through. So you have all, and Representative Eller, is she still here also? Mm-hmm. Her office also. So we have all of your Congress people, senators, and state people all trying to help and make sure that that happened. Thank you very much for bringing that up. That's a bad one on me. So yes. So any questions, other questions from the RAB board that I can answer? If not, thank you very much.
Okay. Moving on to the community RAB member section.
Kathy's first.
And let's see, so it looks like we did start a little bit late, so we're pushing the time. So if you're looking following the schedule, I'm trying to keep to the schedule. But we're pushing a little bit to the right there since we started a couple minutes late.
Okay, I'm putting my timer on then, okay? All right, I'm Kathy Woosterbarth, one of the leaders of the NOW, and I'm a representative on the RAB. As Arnie had indicated, we've been very busy. I'd like to thank the members of the NOW group that actually have attended the meeting. We really appreciate your participation in the process. We have lots of new members. I also would like to thank Michigan Radio for being here. We have the Alpena TV station and a Flint station that has been doing coverage throughout the day and of the meeting. So. We've had regular monthly meetings. We're having outreach, at parades and events throughout the community. We're organizing through nonprofit status. We're in the process of that, and also collaborating with other nonprofit groups throughout the state of Michigan that are have the same concerns. We had a feature, an MLive feature that was published in 8 newspapers throughout Michigan, including Grand Rapids, Flint Journal, Ann Arbor News, Jackson Citizen Patriot, Saginaw News, Bay City, Kalamazoo, and Muskegon. We had a CNN interview, multiple radio interviews, an international feature with Circle of Blue that will be coming out in the near future. During our, between meetings, we have collaborated with MDHHS. Actually, Abai and his staff came to our last meeting and provided lots of health information for us. Also, the fish sampling results, so we were able to interact with them. They also reported that Michigan has decided to do the health studies in southwest Michigan. Is that right, Eva?
Yeah, you mean in the Kent County area? Yeah, they are in the process of starting that.
Okay. We also attended the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative meeting in July, submitting public comments for PFAS to be included in the list of areas of concern in order to be eligible to secure GLRI funding regarding PFAS in the future. And the NOW members are working with the National PFAS Contamination Coalition members regarding the failure of the EPA in the state of Michigan to establish a forum for a regional EPA summit. At this point, the state that has proclaimed itself as the leader in addressing PFAS contamination will not allow a public forum to hear from as many residents as possible. As the epicenter of the PFAS issue and the leading state in identified sites for PFAS contamination, we unfortunately find this decision consistent with the state's past failures to act quickly, act with transparency, and to protect its citizens and the greatest source of the fresh water on earth.
Okay, the RAB developing a comprehensive CERCLA-based project list. Sounds like a mouthful, but really what it is when you look at how the Air Force and the DEQ looked at a site, you'll see a map, and come here after the meeting and look at this. They identified about 70 sites in the 90s for the VOCs and the benzene and those contaminants. Right now, as of 2 years ago when they did the study, they found 23, and they're finding more. Each one of these sites is a potential or actual original source for PFAS contamination in the groundwater. And that's what they're doing when they do the site investigations. However, for each one of these, the reports that come out of their studies and research are about a couple of feet high. Some of them are in our information repository here the Air Force helps us collect. Suggest you go and look at that. However, the public cannot understand this or a detail of a bullet. We're doing this. We need to understand and be able to understand what it means when someone such as Bob or Matt or the contractor briefs us and says that this plume is bounded or this plume is defined and the concentrations are at a point that we don't have to worry about it, or it's not priority 1. We have to know a little bit more than just scratching the surface. And so far, the RAB, under my request for the last 9 months, I think, we're not able to get this information at that level. So we're going to start our own based on what we do know, and we'll keep pushing to get that list.
What does that mean?
It means that every one of these 23 and growing sites will have a line item on a spreadsheet that each RAB member will have, and the public will have access to it. And it will have the steps that the Air Force will have to and is responsible for conducting each one of those investigations and decision points at some point based on the circular process. And then when they brief us that something has happened or will happen, we can mark it down and we know what they're talking about.
I think one of the next steps, this map was prepared for this meeting. The next map that'll be prepared and laminated such as this will show all the active sites still, and then have a legend that says what the sites are. That way it will help you guys. That way, so along with this map, then you can come to the next one and say, okay, even though this is the PFAS area 1, what does that correlate to as far as the IRP site? And that, I think that will probably try to help somewhat. And I think that's what Arnie's getting at, aren't you?
Does that take us off site, away from the fence line, when you say it
Any potential
encompasses?
responsible.
So Clark's Marsh, for instance?
Clark's Marsh
would
is
be-
already on the list. It will have its own row and action item. And actually it'll have two, because the FDO2 are controlling what's going into Clark's Marsh now. But what's in there in the sediment and what's going into the river is another terminology in the circular. Should it be dug up, or should it just trees be planted and it will just flush naturally? Those are two extremes. So that'll have a different row. The wastewater treatment plant will be another item for tracking also. So that's the level of detail. It's not a lot of detail, but it's in front of us, and we know what the terms are, the site names, the numbers, the action that we expect the Air Force to take, and what they tell us they're taking. So that's just the tracking mechanism, but we'll have it locally, not in their computer, which is where they track it now, and we never see that. So timing is important. Let me finish, and then we can see what they say. Second thing is the capture zone. We've been briefed. Thank you very much for releasing that. This is critical. I'm a retired vet, and the veterans and the Association of Veterans that we've been in contact with needs this information so that they will be able to go to the ATSDR with this and say, hey, what about us? What about PFAS? What was our exposure? Can't exactly determine the exposure with a number, but they know they were exposed. They've got more information now than they had yesterday, and it's important information, so thank you. My question is transparency. What changes were made? What were the comments made by the expert that was hired or any other agency? I hope that the draft and those changes and comments can be made available. The last thing. There's been a lot of questions about sampling and analysis, drinking water samples, where's the data, surface water sampling, GSI, all those things. Bob's going to talk about his newest report. However, we don't know, as a community RAB or the public, what's the requirements for sampling by the 3 or 4 different agencies. So the what chemicals are being sampled by each? Where are they? A map is nice, but we don't always get those locations on a map, so we need to do that. When? Is it a monthly sample, a quarterly, or an annual, just go out and grab? You know, I have a lot more confidence and a little more frequency there. Who's taking it and who's overseeing how it's being done in the quality assurance of the analysis? And very important, when do we get to see the results? The 2017 data, well, the 2016 data for the fire training site and the pump and treats for PFAS was given out. The report is, I think, about 6 months ago. I think it was in May. That was 16 data. We don't have the 17 data. I cannot tell you what the concentration of PFAS for 2017 calendar year going out of the storm sewer. I can't give that to you. I don't know. So I want a plan, comprehensive, just outline what's being done, when are the results going to be submitted, so that we can understand the results. Bill, a layman's term, give us a report so we can all understand it. That's it.
Okay. All righty. Do you have a quick question?
Yeah, I do. So this is what you as community chair or co-chair is looking for. Have you had conversation with Matt and the two of you to communicate what you're trying to assess and and is this a favorable agreement between the two of you to be able to come up with an Excel sheet and say, okay, site number 17 has an SI, but it doesn't have this, or we need to do that, or, because as a community member, I'm looking to see what actions have been taken, when you started, where we are in the process, and when can we start remediating some of the things that have been identified for a long, long time.
Right, that's in the first one, the comprehensive list of the sites and what remediation has been done, will be done, and when.
Okay, so my question is, have the two of you been able to agree on getting this information out to the rest of the board, community, townships, period?
I understand. First off, the work session we had, and we had community RAB members there, and they helped me prioritize which of these topics, and we discussed these two and what it is. So we started there. As far as the communication with Matt and the Air Force, I think, I'll let you answer, I think we've talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, we're in the initial stages of discussion. That's the reason I was saying this is just a beginning of multiple as we move forward. Because yes, we do know sort of the path forward and trying to get on the same page with what Arnie is envisioning, you know, to be sort of a workable.
Well, but the topic has been discussed for over 9 months. I think that's fair.
I mean, as a community, and I'll speak for mine, is we'd like to get greater information on what's next rather than continuously hearing what's there. I mean, we know that it's contaminated. There's been a CERCLA process involved with many of these sites over the last few years, and we've all kind of educated ourselves on it. But where are we in site number 12 in the CERCLA process? How does anybody at this table know what's going on for us to report back to our communities and say, well, we're cleaning this site up, we're remediating that site, we need that to happen?
Okay.
I'd like to, very good question, and that's what these two are designed to do on these two topics, is what needs to be done and what's the total list of what both agencies are working on, and when can we be informed, so we all know at least that. I started with a community RAB. I invite the agency RAB members. I will inform you, if you like, of when we're going to have our next work session on this topic, so that the community RAB and all the RAB can communicate this, what we need as a community, to the Air Force, so that what they're doing isn't what I'm asking them to do, it's what our community, our RAB total is.
I have a request for an action item, and that is that this spreadsheet, however the two of you come up with it, is presented to the RAB at the next meeting as a working document that we can review every meeting, that this site we didn't do anything with, this site we did something with. So that to me is the first and foremost important thing to show. This restoration committee is showing the community what we're doing, when we're doing it, and how we're doing it. It's an actual document to say, this is what we accomplished in 9 months, 3 months, a year and a half. Because nobody can say what we know what's been going on, we've educated ourselves. But when somebody asks me, I can't say site number 21 is blah. And just, it falls out. Here's the sheet. Is that something that both parties are agreeable to?
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
I would like to make the point that it isn't just both parties, USAF, MDEQ, MDHHS. And from my limited perspective, MDEQ and MDHHS have significantly more and significantly better data than I've seen presented from the Air Force. Certainly more comprehensive and more widespread.
And earlier. Because they've gotten the money to do some of that. And the Air Force, in total honesty, he doesn't have the money to do what needs to be done. So fortunately, the DEQ has done some of that. But we had a discussion months ago about joint use and how the two agencies share data. There's always room for improvement, I'm sure. I'm sure there could be improvements there. But at least they're sharing most of it, and they are hopefully using their data to save money, but more importantly, take action a little bit more quickly.
I don't mean to cut anybody off, but is this something that we could, move forward, and we got the action item? Is that something that we could address?
Yeah, one more point, though, to that. One more point. And the point is this. We need to identify this. This is what's on base. This is what the Air Force has taken responsibility for. I'd like to know what actions are being taken on this map, okay? And then to do all of the other state environmental impact on the rest of the whole thing. I mean, we got to start somewhere. This is a good spot to start. Doesn't mean we can't build on it.
I just want to say that right now, this forum isn't a good way because to go through this stuff is going to be tedious and to go through with you guys, and I want to. You guys, I would drive you crazy giving you information.
We know that.
But we have to set up a forum whereby those people who really want to grasp the situation technically, because that's where it starts. What's actually going on, as far as we know? Where are our data gaps? What do we know? What don't we know? And then where do you proceed from there? Because even, I know that there are other release points than what that this map would indicate, just because we see the data that tells us there's something going on. So it's a complex conversation.
And I think we're good to move forward with this. And like I said, we'll get together with the co-chairs. We got the action item. Is it okay to move forward? Okay. And I don't want to cut anybody off, but
it's fine. Different point. Continue. Different point. Continue. Do you want to wrap something up? I have a different point.
Oh, well, I just wanted to leave it. I wanted to have time for the other presenters, but
fair enough. No. This is about this map. So I want to bring a point of contention around the border, which you've drawn around the old base and described that the line through Clark's Marsh is where you are drawing it. Because, Mr. Martinglio, would you like to comment about that property which the Forestry Service unwittingly received as a donation from the Air Force after it was contaminated?
Well, what I've reported before, we're getting off topic.
Yeah, and if we could add this to an action item, also
that would be wonderful.
Quick, but answer it.
And I would hope that I don't have to go through 2.5 more months of emails trying to fight to get something addressed. But that particular map right here, I'm pointing that out right now, that I'm in protest of that line. It is not the correct place to draw that line. That Clark's Marsh is contaminated, not 1/3 of it.
The line is a property line. It's not a contamination line.
I understand.
So,
but that's not the way this is being portrayed here.
Yep.
And we can, it's a base boundary line.
Understood.
And then, there's land that was used under agreement by the Air Force. And so all that, if we want to put in some kind of report or action item.
Thank you. That's what I would like to see.
Okay.
That agreement we're working on right now.
Yeah, so it's not complete. I was hoping to share a little more detail about that. It's just not ready. But an MOU that's been in existence with how the Air Force and the U.S. Forest Service operate expires in November, and we're renewing that, and that we'll be able to share that information in the next month or two. So.
Okay. And go ahead, that leads us, if you have any other updates.
No, that's it.
Okay. Anybody else have updates?
I just want to say that as a new facilitator that's going to be facilitating our RABs, I want you to be extremely conscious of the community involved and the education of our community that we've all taken to be able to converse on these subjects, that you want to continually move on to the next report and move on to the next report. We as a community stand strong on identifying what the problem is, and we're here to restore it. So without identifying it and without being able to communicate to the rest of the community and all the governmental agencies, that's probably the most important thing this meeting is for. And it's put in the first part of the agenda for 5 minutes because we each have 30 seconds to say something, or 3 minutes to say something. I think that needs to be changed. And that's the premise of what Mr. Cummings has said in his email requests, and I'm requesting it verbally to our new facilitator.
Okay.
So I just wanted you to be aware of the importance of this particular conversation and how it's going. Because this map and identifying the sites on base and talk about it at every meeting so that every 3 months we know what's been going on, we know what the workload's been, and we know what the work coming up is about, so that we can be remediating these sites within the process. And maybe we can shorten that process from a 9-month process to a 6-month process, being in front of it instead of behind it. And that's the point of the conversation in my mind.
I agree, and thank you for your support, Mr. Bush.
I agree with that also. That is a good point there.
So let more.
Correct.
You're saying don't try to skip to the next updates?
Well, the reports that you're trying to move us towards are very important reports based on the agenda and what you guys have come up with.
Okay.
And I'm telling you that you started out because new things came up, and we have new updates to bring forth because of the timing and everything else.
Okay.
And I'm also addressing that since the RAB's inception and how we were first starting it, and now the evolution of it is a new facilitator, new state representatives, new people on board. They're getting themselves caught up to speed. We're there already, and we're looking for particular results every meeting we have. I don't want to sit here for 4 hours and come out with what we had 3 months ago.
Thank you.
I want things to move faster.
Yep.
That's why I bring it up. That's why he's initiating this proposal.
Okay, so that's definitely a work item that we're capturing here with your ad. Okay.
All righty. We had anybody else have any updates from RAB members? I know Mr. Abiy had an update you wanted to share.
Okay, mine is, the first one is the coal bus in Pinecrest neighborhood well test result and filter decision. And DHD2 and DHHS have made a decision to provide filters to those residents in those neighborhoods whose well had been tested pre-2018 and or 2018 and have a detection of any PFAS related with firefighting foams. And why we are making this decision is we saw like a change in concentration in the groundwater, and science for the PFAS is evolving. And there is nothing alarming, there's nothing close to the lifetime as advisory, just for the abundance of precaution that we're recommending the filters. And the filter is like an interim measure until we know more about the plume, and then we will come to the permanent solution. The second update I have is regarding the fish sampling update. I think we provided that update for the now meetings a week ago. And for the Vanatan Lake, I think that the guidelines is already out for black crappie, largemouth and smallmouth, bass, northern pike, and walleye. And rock bass, the data is not yet available. And the driving force or the restrictive chemicals for those fish are mainly mercury and PFAS. For the Asabu,
You didn't sample any walleye in Vanatan Lake to put it on the list, though, did you?
well, for Vanatan Lakes in 2018, black crappie, largemouth and smallmouth bass, northern pike, walleye have been sampled, including the rock bass. The rock bass data is not yet available, but for the others that I've said, is already there.
Well, walleye were on the restriction list, the restricted safe to eat list.
Yes, and that's because of mercury.
Correct.
Yep.
We were never told they sampled walleye. We were told that they were not going to sample it. So then
contradiction.
We may have some good news then.
Yeah, I think that's okay. And for the Asabu River, smallmouth bass and Atlantic salmon have been sampled. And result for the Atlantic salmon, particularly for the PCB, hasn't yet been finalized. For that particular river, there's no change in the advisory. The do not eat advisory is still there because of the varying concentration in PFAS. And for migratory fish, the restrictive chemicals have been used to drive the guidelines, and those chemicals are the PCB and dioxin for walleye. And additional fish sampling is still...
Wait. Okay. Walleye were not sampled in the river either in 2018, this last time. Yeah.
No, just for 2018, what I said is smallmouth bass and Atlantic salmon. Yes. Just only those two species have been sampled so far.
Okay.
And there is no change in the no change in the guidelines for the Asabu River.
Got it.
And there is additional fish collection still pending for Vanatan Lake. They are going out to look for a perch, and still it's on their schedule. And for Cedar Lake too.
So then is it possible that with the testing that went on and what's going to be tested, is this something that the state can wrap their arms around so that we get a customized annual fish sampling so that we know exactly what's going on with the population of fish? Because we have a lot of people that consume fish here. They use it as part of their dietary, their everyday living is consuming fish in the area. So we've been getting fish sampling on a 3 to 5 year basis with no walleye, no perch. The fish that we're catching here are not on the list because it's a mandated DEQ, DNR standard fish sampling. But our area is not standard to any other area based on what we're dealing with. And I'd like to get some kind of a commitment from the state that they would consider doing it on an annual basis so that the update of the do not eat or the restrictions are addressed.
Yes, I will pass this message to my management.
Thank you.
The consensus there is that the chemicals, we are not seeing change like in 1 year or 2 years. That's why they are doing sampling in like every 3 or 5 years.
PFAS was never present, so you weren't testing, and you don't know what the levels of PFAS are going to be, and blah, 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 blah. So it's just not standard anymore. Our area isn't standard. That's all I'm trying to say. We need a customized program based on what we're having to deal with. Right. So that we can go back and say, okay, here's the data. I mean, people can make a conscious choice with current data.
Can I ask that, this is a topic that comes up every single meeting, and you briefed it, and you had another person here briefing it to the NOW group. What I would suggest is an action item that this organization, the RAB, work together and possibly partner, and probably I would recommend partner with the now, and put something in writing to the Department of Health and Human Services and the MDEQ, who are both responsible for the fish consumption program, sampling, analysis, reporting out, and put something in writing, because we can't continue to spend a lot of talk on this. We need to put it in writing. That's a suggestion. I would ask that it be put in as a action item.
I would fully agree. That's essential, I think.
Okay.
Because we got
We've talked about it at every meeting.
Thank you.
Yes. Anything else, sir?
The last one is the deer sampling, so still we are waiting for that result. As soon as we get that result, we'll make it available for the public.
Okay. Anybody else have any updates before we move on to our next session? And so just a reminder, we do have about an hour left on the planned RAB meeting. So we're at an hour. I don't know if do you guys want to take a break now or just move on through it and just get on through it? Okay, go ahead and we're going to have a presentation by the MDEQ next, and turn it over to you guys.
Nope. Okay. Get the slideshow. Nope, that's the Air Force. Is it?
I don't think we got a presentation. No. I don't think so.
Nope. Am I on yet?
Actually, just go to the podium. I think the cell phones are interfering with our wireless system. So.
All right.
Well, I'm not very good at standing still, so.
You'll have to help me. No. All right. Let's try this. All right. So, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
All right. So this here is the current plume map. You've seen it before. I haven't gotten the new data in with the surface water sampling that we're doing and the groundwater wells that we just put in that analysis. That'll fill in this map more completely. We talked about one of the things that Arnie brought up, or maybe it was Jeff, about bounding the plume. So I'll talk a little bit about that, because the work we're doing in the field with our drill rigs is to try and bound these plumes. So when we began looking here on the base, one of the things that was really striking was that every well we sampled had PFAS in it. Eventually we found 4 or 5 that don't have PFAS in them. That water we think is coming from up gradient, and it's just at the bottom of the aquifer, and it's not those wells are picking up that water. So otherwise, everywhere you stick a hole, there seems to be PFAS. And that's somewhat understandable, because they took sludges from the lagoons and they spread them out along the runways. So if the sludges have PFAS in them and you spread them all over the ground, then sure, it'll end up in the groundwater. So there's always a little bit of PFAS in just about every single well. So the darker areas show you where, at this point, we know it's, well, darker. These black areas mean it's really bad, very high levels, and then the purples, and then you work your way down to the lighter colors. And a little bit of confusion here, because these would be the same color here, but because of the picture underneath, it's lighter, so it makes it look lighter, but that's all about the same concentration. So this is the total PFAS and PFOA plume. And up here you can see that we've got a bunch of things going on here. Each individual well that we have sampled and every piece of surface water we have sampled up here has had PFAS in it. So my consultants are very conservative, and so they just put little blips around these things, but generally
we would assume that this is all impacted. Now, this is interesting when it comes to the bounding of the plume question, because these are 2 wells that we put in, and we're still hitting PFAS and PFOA. So you'd say, well, you have not bounded the plumes. But what we found that these are totally different types of PFAS than what you see coming from the base. So there's another source up here. It appears to be small, much lower concentrations, and it's not of the chemicals PFOS and PFOA that are part of the health advisory. So these are different chemicals than what we see down in all this area here. So that's a new little plume we're running into. Cedar Lake has PFAS in it too. Again, very low levels. And like I always say, where there are humans, there are PFAS. So if you're around a lake, you know, you've washed your clothes, it went down into the laundry soap went down into the ground or whatever, it got out into your lake. Maybe your motor oils in your boats had some in it. So that's why you'll see probably in almost any little lake in Michigan, you're going to find some of this stuff. And eventually we're going to get out and look at this a little bit more, but that because they're low levels of the kinds we're not so worried about, we haven't jumped on that yet right now. As you know, there are problems all across the state. So we down here, we pretty well think we've got things bounded. The river here, we put in a bunch of wells along here, and they were clean along River Road, except for when you got right in this area. So that means we were concerned that these plumes from the base continued on past the river. And I won't get into the geology much, but there used to be a huge river down here. So the buried river that was down here could have been drawing water towards it, but it doesn't. The Asabo blocks it. So that's what's going on with this. Are there any questions on this map? Because there's massive amounts of information on this map, so I don't know what you want to know.
On the east side of Manhattan, I see, is that a red spot?
Right, like right there?
No, closer, right there.
Yeah, that's, again, those are, like, I would probably tie these things together a little more. Like I said, my consultants are very conservative about how they draw this.
Is that
so
70? That's above, that's 70?
these are total PFAS.
Okay.
So it's not above the 70 PFOS and PFOA, the 2 that we have health advisory numbers for, but it is above 70 total PFAS. And this is the area where they're extending, you know, have encouraged everybody to get on to either bottled water or filtered water. That's because we know these plumes are hotter than, we're concerned about how contaminated they are, but there's no health numbers for the things that are in your wells. And we don't know where all the plumes are. Sorry, I've taken a little bit too much time on this, but is there any other questions before we move?
The rest of the east side of shoreline been tested?
Yes, any residential well here.
On Van Etten Lake.
Oh, Van Etten Lake, yeah, that was all sampled all the way up here, and there's this magic river that flows right here, and the plumes stop there. Yep, Thalen Creek. And I don't know why this should have been filled in also, because this.
How long ago was it tested?
That was tested. Well, we've had ongoing testing. You know, probably last year was the last year we sampled anything along here, because we were concerned about Loud Island. Loud Island had higher level contamination, so we were concerned that stuff was getting over maybe in this area, so we again sampled more along this. We sampled maybe 30 wells along there and haven't found anything. It's basically non-detect. They're, like I said, if you're around a lake, you're probably going to have something, but they look like what we see out here in the forest. So it's not. We have not seen anything over there.
Is this slide available online, Bob?
I'm not sure if it is, but it should be put online.
It will be if it was in the presentation you submitted.
Oh, okay.
It will be.
Yeah.
It'll be
Well, I
on
think
the
on
Air Force
MPART too,
website.
we want to get all these maps on, and they have had hard. I mean, there's quite a bit of stuff on our MPART page for Wurtsmith, but there's so much going on that I don't know if everything's gotten on there. So yeah, we want you to be able to have this map.
An updated map?
It will be, well, this is what it is for the moment, but it'll get updated when we get this new data in. Sorry, I'm taking a bit of time on this. Go ahead to the next slide. Okay, this is just your PFOS plus your PFOA. And so you can see that most of the plume is in this less than 50 to 5 out here for those two contaminants. But everything that's red and above is above that health advisory number.
Still red over on the east side.
East side.
Where is that? That might just be the numbers.
Right there.
Yeah, that's 50 is written in there or something like that, a number. So it looks like it's a red, but it's actually this lighter color.
What about the monitoring well at the river mouth?
You're talking about this one right here, right?
Yeah. What does it say?
Well, it's this color up here,
Oh, it is.
but it has a 50. Well, there's a little dark spot there, but I know there's nothing over there because that's just screaming about it. It could be above 50, but below 70. That's what it is. It's above 50. Yeah, because we were pointing out to the military that there were some on the other side of there that were approaching the 70. So those are these 50 to 70 ones. I wanted those on the map so that we could emphasize the fact that, hey, those are close to the number. Still, it's...
What they've been talking about.
Still not taking responsibility for that area?
Well, we haven't, we haven't really...
That's the...
Nothing's really changed in that. We haven't really talked about it of late. We've been talking about a whole bunch of other stuff.
Way behind the time.
So,
Totally right.
Have you sampled that area more than once?
yeah.
As the concentrations increase?
We haven't done a lot of that, but they go up and down. Here's how I explain plumes to everybody. They're like clouds. You get a rain event or a snow event, and it flushes stuff down, and you get this big slug go through, and then behind it's not too bad, and then you get another event, and it'll slug through. So we never expect the numbers to stay stable. They just go up and down most of the time.
How long ago was the east side of Van Ness tested?
Oh, well, we're still out there testing.
Not residential wells though, right?
In this particular area where we've told people to get water, we're not spending a lot of money in this area.
Right.
Okay, it's just because we've already said, all right, everybody switch over. And we got all these other people and other places to worry about. We're putting our money in those other areas.
You do have
But we
two
just got
test
water.
wells.
We just got water, drinking water.
You-
What about going through your skin?
Oh, well, I'm not the health guy. But I've heard 100 times from the health people that won't go through your skin.
You do have a test well.
Okay, Mark, I'm a geologist.
Is that right?
So how often are you doing the test wells that you have allowed?
Well, we're going to do, we're doing it right now. So it's,
You're going to get it.
we're talking about,
There is a
all right,
possibility in that case.
what we're doing is trying to get the Air Force to do the full investigation and work. So we have very limited money.
Good luck with
So, well,
So you're
okay, I
not
don't,
doing the test wells
I know, it's hard.
on a quarterly basis?
not on a quarterly basis. We want to do the surface water more frequently. We're more concerned about surface water than these plumes. We know these plumes will take a while to address, and until you start addressing it. So just what we say to people is don't drink it if you're in these areas, okay? That's because we could spend a lot of money sampling and resampling, but we'd still tell you the same thing the next day. Do not drink your water, okay? So, sorry. Believe me, if they'd give me unlimited money, I would sample all day long. I'm really nerdish about data, so sorry. Yeah, can't sample it clean, that's what they always say.
The plumes that have reached, that's gonna be leaching out into the big lake, right? Besides what is being.
Yeah.
Bennett Creek or the Asabo, it's all going into Lake Huron.
Yeah.
And somewhere down Lake Huron is where the city water comes from.
Yeah.
Where they draw in the water for the city.
Yeah, well, we're you know, fortunately, none of this over here is above the health advisory. So by the time it gets into Lake Huron water, it's diluted out to virtually nothing. But they are keeping very close watch on Hushra, the water that you guys get in your municipal system, what's in here at the library. They're very carefully watching that to make sure there's not a problem.
So that's, okay, that's
Yeah.
good to hear if they're testing it.
Yeah.
Whenever they get water to us, hopefully it won't have any of the PFAS in it.
Bob, is Van Etten Lake water been tested lately?
Yeah, in fact, my guys are out there doing it this week too.
So serve the water itself in the lake?
Mm-hmm.
Tested.
Yeah.
When will those
And actually, I'm going to get to a slide on that. I'm sorry. There's so much fun stuff in here. I'm sorry, but it's important. But.
Well, I have to make a correction. The HRTRA has not tested the water since 2016, according to the township.
You're kidding. Oh, sorry.
Say that again?
They haven't tested the water since 2016.
I thought we were sampling it last year in 2017.
Yeah.
I need my consultant here.
They're scheduled to sample it again.
Yeah, they're scheduled to
But they're.
Because I just heard there was data. Well, I'm sorry. I'm
according to
confused
the
about it.
township, right.
All right. Well, they should know better than I do then. I was sure I just heard about data, so, but I haven't seen it, so I haven't seen it.
I got it, so just not yet.
All right, sorry. Let's move on. And
Well, it's 12 months in here.
okay, so this was the locations. These are all somebody asked about how many wells we had put in so far to bound the plumes, and this is it. This is the universe. So when we got down here, residential wells and our wells all confirmed. There's virtually nothing down here.
Wait, the river is over 70 parts per trillion.
No, I'm talking 2 or 3 parts per trillion if there was something, stuff that you can't tell what that's going on with that. And then up here, you can see that's where I showed you that plume we found up there that was a problem. And so anyway, this is the work that's been done. Like I said, these were all clean across here except for right at the school. And so, okay. So we're out sampling, filling in, finishing
Green
it.
means it was good.
What's that?
Green means it was good.
No, that was just the phase of sampling. So there will be a report coming out from the consultants that will fill in what all the data was. Okay, yeah, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. All right, this is the surface water and groundwater interface sampling that they are out doing. It's a little bit updated this last week. I added 4 or 5 new surface water samples. But what we're doing here is and this is for well, I won't bother to get into all that, but the Asabo River, the marshes, 3-pipe strain, and then Van Etten Lake. We're also adding some work down here right at the mouth of the river of the Asabo, because we found in the groundwater a new plume that doesn't seem to be related at all to Air Force, and it had PFAS in it above the groundwater surface water number, not above the health advisory number, but above that number for going into surface water. So we were going to sample the surface water down around this area to see if it was having an impact on the mouth of the river, different from what the Air Force Base was having. And so here they're just going along. They poke a rod into the water, into the soil under the water, into the sediments, and then they suck the water from in the ground out, so they can see what the groundwater's coming up into the lake. We're finding out where the plumes are going into the lake. So like when you're seeing your foam events, well, they're being generated by probably certain areas that have more PFAS in them. So we're finding that connection between the groundwater and the surface water, but then also sampling the surface water again so we can correlate data. So, any other questions?
Bob, can I say to everyone that with the help of NOW, I hope, these two presentations, DEQ and the Air Force, will have that up on the NOW site in a few days?
And I'd like to make
So
an
you won't have to wait until the minutes come out and all that, so you'll have it while it's fresh in your memory.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to see a lot more detail.
And can we make an action item to look into the HUSHRA sampling so that can be answered for the public?
Yeah, it's just gonna, yeah.
All right,
Do you want to talk? Do you want to address it?
We're going to go ahead and move on
Dave,
to
do you want to address it?
your presentation.
What's that? Dave? Do you want to address that? Do you want to make a statement about that? Okay. Malcolm? Here. So it's my understanding that the testing for the township, or for the HUSHRA water, is scheduled for what, next month, is it?
The end of September.
The end of September.
That'll be done by ACOM, and we're hopeful to have results back from that HUSHRA testing from the source of the municipal water system between Thanksgiving and Christmas.
But the most recent testing was?
2016.
2016.
Wow. Time flies.
All right, sir.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tarek Buckmaster. I'm with the DEQ Water Resource Division, and I supervise the Industrial and Stormwater Permits Unit. We issue industrial permits for all the industrial facilities in the state of Michigan. So we issue permits for facilities such as the groundwater remediation system at Wurtsmith, in addition to power plants and other manufacturing facilities in the state. And I myself have been involved with the Wurtsmith site since the development of the FTO2 location and have worked closely with Bob over the years. I'm going to provide a brief overview of the responsibilities of the Water Resource Division, and then also how we regulate discharges from granular activated carbon facilities. The Water Resource Division is charged with protecting the water resources of the state, and our primary goal is to ensure that waters are safe for drinking, recreating, fishing, and provide healthy aquatic ecosystems. To do this, the Water Resource Division administers a number of programs, being broken up into 3 areas. We have a groundwater discharge permits program, which is responsible for protecting the groundwater resources. We have a number of programs in our surface water quality program, which includes aquatic invasive species, industrial pretreatment, and the NPDES surface water discharge permit program. And then we also have a water resources program, which covers numerous construction activities along the Great Lakes shoreline, in critical dunes areas, and in the floodplains. The regulations that the Water Resource Division operates under are specified in the Natural Resource Environmental Protection Act, NREPA. As part of that, the Part 31 rules for water resources protection specify Michigan's water quality standards. The primary goal of the water quality standards is to protect the designated uses of our waters in Michigan. This includes public water supply, recreation, aquatic life and wildlife, and fish consumption. One of the main methods of protecting designated uses is through the issuance of surface water discharge permits. We operate under the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or NPDES permit program. Michigan has delegated authority to issue permits by EPA under the provisions of the Clean Water Act. The Part 31 rules require that any wastewater discharge in the state be authorized by a discharge permit. One of the surface water permits that we issue is called a Substantive Requirements Document, or SRD. This is typically used for on-site remediation activities, such as what we have at Wurtsmith with the new treatment facility. The SRD is very similar to an MPDS permit. It's actually a subset of the MPDS permit program, and it's very permit-like. The remediation activities authorized by the permit are still required to comply with the state water quality standards and our treatment technology-based standards. Both the SRD and the MPDS permit include pollutant discharge limitations and monitoring requirements, and both are enforceable under state law. Wurtsmith has been issued a number of SRDs over the years, beginning in the 1980s. These SRDs were originally focused on the volatile organic compounds and typically used aeration for treatment. Aeration is not an appropriate treatment for PFAS. And the latest two treatment facilities that have been constructed on site contain multi-stage granular activated carbon treatment units, which is effective for the removal of PFAS contaminants. The GAC treatment system, as part of the application for the FTO2 system, the Water Resource Division did a very thorough best professional judgment review of treatment technology capabilities of granular activated carbon. We incorporated these requirements into the SRD for the FTO2 location, and over the years the operation of FTO2 has demonstrated that a well-operated GA system could consistently achieve these treatment and water quality standard levels, and the expectation is that the new treatment system would incorporate many of these same requirements with having some slight modifications due to the slightly different pollutants that are being treated at the new treatment system. So I can take some questions now if anyone has any. Yes?
It's very well to say that the treatment plants put out permitted water. What about the pump that has been and is occurring? What kind of a discharge permit is there for the stuff that's going into Van Etten Creek and into the Au Sable River currently, untreated?
As you know, there's three historic pump and treat systems, Arrow Street, Benzene, and Mission Street. And Arrow and Benzene are being tied into and be treated by the new treatment facility. Previously, they just had air strippers on them, which is not effective at removing PFAS. But the benefit of maintaining those systems is that it was protecting the down gradient drinking water wells, and so that's why the discharges and pumping from those locations was maintained. So the expectation is that this new treatment system will operate efficiently in removing PFAS, and then the discharge from that system will go into the storm drain to Van Etten Creek. And then Mission Street is also proposed to be added into this system next year.
Has there ever been any permit applications, acceptance or denial for Clark's Marsh over the last 20 years? Or any history to that?
Not that I'm aware of. We do have the treatment system at FTO2, which discharges into Clark's Marsh, and then there is the historic municipal treatment facility that's also located north of Clark's Marsh that's been discharging municipal wastewater for decades. But other than that, that's all I'm aware of.
No remediant action has been taken over the last couple decades to try to remediate Clark's Marsh, to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay.
That's a potential target in the future.
Potential? Yeah, it's more than potential that something's wrong there, but that's irrelevant.
Who monitors the discharge of water?
For the granulated activated carbon system, the Air Force monitors the influent, the effluent, and then between each stage on a regular basis, and then they use that monitoring to determine when they need to rotate the tanks in the treatment system.
So the Air Force monitors the discharge water to make sure that it's meeting the requirements and not the state of Michigan? Is that what you're telling me?
Yep. Yes, that's correct. But
you gotta be kidding me.
it's a standard program for all of our industrial municipal facilities. We do have regular follow-up, and we do investigations, and we do take samples to confirm the sampling that's done by the individual facilities.
I sure hope the next governor takes care of the state of Michigan, takes care of this problem.
Has the, you just said that the state goes in and samples periodically. Have you done that here at Wurtsmith on the existing plant?
Our district staff is responsible for following up on enforcement of the permit requirements. I don't think that they have gone in there and done any sampling yet, but I'm not aware.
So I guess the question is, does this state water quality, the permit group, have the authority to, almost unannounced, go in and take a sample?
Yes, we do, and we have done that. We do that for,
But not
multiple
at
facilities.
the FTO2 site that's been operating for the
No, we
last
have
3
not
years.
done
Have
that.
not done that yet.
As far as I know, we have not done that. But the type of treatment system that's being utilized has multiple carbon stages, and each carbon stage achieves about a 99% reduction in the pollutants that are used. So it's been proven that to be effective in treatment for PFAS, and if the system's operated properly, which the Air Force has been doing, and we have been following up with them on their treatment and monitoring requirements, and
I think I understand that, yes, the system works, but as a community that's been living with this for over 30 years, it would be beneficial to us to say, yeah, the state has come in here and we have tested that, and they are telling you the truth. Because right now, there's a large doubt in our community if this is going to get cleaned up or not. So, yeah, anything that the state can come in and say, yes, this is happening, would definitely help the people in this room and out in the community. So that's why I asked that.
And I understand your concerns.
Passing on with that, of course, there's the EPA Nationwide Health Advisory, which is PFOS and PFOA. This is what I'm told the Air Force monitors for on when they're testing the efficacy of the charcoal filters.
Yes.
The ATSDR recently released a study that also included PFNA, PFHXS, another substance with minimum risk levels, significantly lower authorized levels. The Air Force isn't monitoring this out of the activated charcoal. My understanding is that the activated charcoal has different efficiencies based on the different compounds. And so we really don't know what the levels of bad things that are being discharged there are. Is that true?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions there, but yes,
yeah.
There's a lot of things that are true. Yes, the activated carbon does have different removal efficiencies for different parameters. The SRD does only require monitoring for PFOS and PFOA between the stages. Those are the two parameters that we have state water quality standards for in the state of Michigan. EPA has not promulgated water quality standards for those two parameters. So that is something that Michigan has. It is more restrictive than EPA's requirements. The number that we have for PFOS is very low. It's one of the lowest in the country of those that have promulgated standards. So we do have that in place. The treatment levels that are required for the treatment facility at FTO2 and then also for the new facility are also very restrictive and have been demonstrated that if operated properly can get it down to non-detect levels. So we're comfortable with what is being done at the two treatment facilities and feel that it'd be protective of that. We're also going to have the treatment facility monitor for all those different PFAS compounds too to ensure that they are also being removed efficiently. I think I got every element of that.
How is that monitoring for the other compounds to take place?
Just in line with the monitoring that's being done on the treatment efficiency. It's just a regular routine requirement that we're going to include.
Does the state have the authority to take the samples from the GAG and the ambient, the stormwater surcharge or discharge into Van Nant Creek to analyze and report out all 17 of those PFASs that they used to do before the Air Force went to only 2 years ago. Is that sampling and analysis reportable? The lab puts it out, puts the data out, it's my understanding. You don't get a cut by just reporting out the 2. They charge you for all 17 of them.
I don't review the data personally. We have district staff responsible for this facility.
So can we make that an action item? Nods? You think that's?
Yes,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
Let's do it.
That's on the DEQ is the owner on that one.
Yeah. Well, actually, Matt's crew could actually answer the question.
Well,
right now.
2 answers. Let's expand it and say, yes, we want answers from
Right.
both agencies, because it will be a different answer.
Yes, one of the things is just talking to Tarek about, and we're getting together next week with the startup of the new GAC plant, is a monitoring frequency requirements and a sampling analysis plan.
Yeah.
So we were talking about that both at the plant and prior to the meeting, so.
Yeah, the SRD that we have in place now is targeted for the 3 specific locations and doesn't address the 2 combined discharges that are be going through the GAC treatment system. So we're going to be tailoring the monitoring requirements specific to the newly constructed system.
Does the state have an opportunity to change the permit rules so that instead of looking for PFOA and PFAS, you may have in the permit process the availability of adding other chemicals to it? And if so, what could this community do to put that forth?
Yes, we can modify the SRDs to include additional monitoring requirements. However, at this time, the state only still has the standards for the 2 parameters, and EPA has yet to promulgate any. So I know that that is work that is ongoing, and our expectation is that once we develop standards for different parameters, we'll include those in the SRDs as well.
And also a footnote to that is, since the governor signed the bill to establish that 11-member panel to oversee the DEQ adding new chemicals and standards, up to a year of review after the DEQ proposes it. So
I don't know the details of that review process. I don't know if that's been identified.
Can we make a suggestion that the results of
Okay,
the
thank you very
testing be made available as soon as possible to everybody?
Okay.
Yeah, sure. That's good. Thanks. Public.
Lunch up front.
Yeah. Yeah, he wants to go ahead.
Why isn't it public right away?
Okay, we're going to move on to Mr. Matt Mars for the Air Force presentation.
With a preliminary sort of recap, and this is something that's sort of been an ongoing question that Bill Gaines has brought up, and it needs to be addressed once and for all, hopefully, and put to bed. So let's get started on that. The first one's the pre-foaming on the runways, which Bill brought up in prior RABs. And so our contractor, AMEC Wood, went and did some more due diligence and talked to the assistant former fire chief. And then, going down through there, determined through, the interview that pre-foaming was not done. And then they also checked about the foaming. So, and moving on to the next slide, also ask, the potential crash sites, and you may bring up that map if possible, or look at the map over there. But basically, just going down through, where the KC-135 site was, and refer to those maps that are over there around the table if you want to sort of pass some of those around. That sort of shows where the KC-135, which crashed north of the runway. And then also about the A6 sites. And with that being said, I may ask our contractor to sort of elaborate a little bit more on what you found out on those, if you don't mind. On the A6?
The A6? So the A6 crash site, or what's identified on the map as Area 10, was during the interview, one of the firefighters said that A6 intruder plane crashed on Wurtsmith, and he said it's somewhere in the runway, so we had to show Area 10 as the entire runway because we didn't know where the A6 crashed in the runway and investigate the entire runway. So we did a research on all the crashes that happened between 1925 and 2015, which we did that research, and we didn't find any A6 crashed at Wurtsmith. So the information that it happened is not valid. They found 4 A6 planes that crashed in the U.S., but none of them was crashed at the Wurtsmith Air Force Base. So when we did the SI, before we did the SI, the work plan, we presented it to the MDQ. We said, well, we have the information that it crashed, but we looked into the database for all the military airplane crash, and it didn't happen. So MDQ and us agreed that we're not going to investigate the entire runway for Area 10, but we're going to investigate the other areas that we know that crash happened in that runway. So that's why Area 10 was not investigated by itself, but we investigated it within other areas that we're investigating now.
Are we able to pull up the map so you can sort of talk about it?
Click view map will pop up.
Click on the view map.
So the entire runway here is identified as Area 10. If the A6 crash was real, we should have poked holes along the runway, north and south, at every agreeable distance, like 500 feet or 1,000 feet or something, all along the runway, just to find out where the crash happened. When we found out that crash did not happen, we investigated the runway based on other known sites, like KC 135, which is right here, and then there's like 2 other areas, which is identified as Area 16, over here and over here. We also, our approach is outside-in sampling, which is basically we go from down gradient samples and we keep chasing the source up gradient until we find that. So we started from like the private well sampling over here back in 2015, and then we did up-gradient from it during the 2016 and then the 2017. We identified some hot spots, and then we kept on going up-gradient from the hot source until we find it non-detect. So the runway eventually was sampled while we were sampling here at Area 1. This is Area 1, or Area 15. This is Area 15. Area 2, we also went upgraded until we found non-detect. Area 7, we made it also upgraded until we hit non-detect, as well as the other areas. So the outside-in approach, if there is anything in the runway, it will be identified from the down gradient source. So just to let everybody know, yes, Area 10 was not investigated by itself, but if there is anything in the runway, we're going to catch it down gradient and we're going to chase it up gradient until we find it.
Okay, and while we're talking about that, it might also go into the wastewater treatment plant and where the sludges were dumped up above that area that you guys looked at during your PA.
So there's 2 sludge spreading areas. There's this sludge spreading area from the current wastewater treatment plant, and then there's like the historical. So the historical is along north of the runway, and this is the area. And then over here as well. This is the sludge dump area. So basically they just took the biosolid from here, which they typically do in every other waste treatment plant, not only in Wurtsmith. All over the country, not only in Wurtsmith. They take the biosolids and then they spread it either in farms or somewhere else that they agree on. So historically they spread it all over here and here as well. And we sampled the soil along the north of the runway. We did not find any significant PFAS in the soil. It might be in the ground from some other source, but not from the sludge spreading area. Am I pressing it correct? Any other questions?
Okay, you might also look at your fuel spill areas along there, the area 4. In the area, yeah, in the area 15, where the sampling.
These area numbers are areas that we identified during the PA. So each area is being identified by itself, or like it's assigned as an area number based on a different source. It's just based on the PA. Like the preliminary assessment, for example, here is saying like there is a maintenance shop, or over here is saying like there is a maintenance shop that hit AFFF. So we identified each one of them as a separate source area. When we came out in 2016, we found out like some of them are not source areas, they're just downgrading from a source area. So we combined the areas together. So like area 15, for example, we found out that it's not an area by itself. It's not, what I mean by area, it's a source area. So it's not a source area, but it's downgrading from the source area, which is area 1. So we combined area 1 and area 15 with it. This is what we're doing currently. We're taking groundwater sampling from the source to see like how bad is it in the source, and then we are putting groundwater monitoring wells downgraded from it to monitor at the source and downgrade, as well as area 6 as well.
And if you don't mind, go ahead and show where you're going to be putting the monitoring wells, down gradient there at the Ratliff Park. Because that was one of the things with the township that was talked about today.
So, as I said, we're putting monitoring wells at the source, identified source areas. They are immediately upgrading from the private well, drinking water wells. So we're monitoring at the source, and we're monitoring downgrade. So we're putting 2 wells. You can see the Air Force Beach, which is under here.
Yeah.
We're putting actually 4 sample locations at the Air Force Beach. And then 4 along the residential areas, actually 8, because each well has like 2 intervals, shallow and deep. We want to thank the residents that allowed us to drill in their backyard and put wells in their backyard. So we're putting 8 monitoring locations along here, which is downgradient from the residents to see like what is going underneath the residents, and we are monitoring it from the source and the downgradient to see like what the residents are exposed to. We also are putting, as I said, 4 at the Air Force Beach and 2 downgradient from this area, which is within Pierce Point as well.
And one of the things Arnie brought forth really that we're going to work on, because right now we have, it's this area, but what we're going to show is which sites, IRP sites, are connected within these areas. So it will hopefully help people as we move forward over a period of time. Like the sludge areas we're talking about, that's a IRP site 35 and IRP site 45. So, you know, as we move forward, then you can start to say, okay, that's what sites it is, and it ties back to that, and that's what we reported on. So hopefully that will help some. Okay, moving on.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, ma'am.
You tested the sludge. How far down did you get your samples from?
We wanted to test the sludge itself, so it's surface.
So you didn't go down?
Well, we did go down, but not at the sludge area. At the sludge area, we just wanted to see if the sludge that was spread had PFAS in it or not. We were not looking for the soil because the PFAS characteristic doesn't stick to the soil unless it's organic.
So if it went down 4 or 5 feet in 30 years, you didn't go that far to check?
Oh, I mean, if it goes down, we're gonna capture it from the groundwater.
Oh.
If it gets flushed into the, I mean, when the rain comes, it will flush the contamination into the groundwater.
Over what period of time?
I mean, it's continuous.
I know, for how many decades? Forever. It's down there and didn't go that far enough to see.
Okay, so we did, okay, the objective of the sludge spreading area was to identify if the sludge that was spread on that area contains PFAS or not. We did collect soil samples from different sources, and we went all the way down to the groundwater table. So in different locations, we didn't find it in the soil, we found it in the groundwater. So
I'm getting confused. Just for the sludge, the dirt?
Yes.
If it's in the land, did you go down 5 feet or more to test the soil samples for PFAS?
Can I help out here a little bit?
Yes.
When I first started looking at this stuff, it was a soap. That's what I heard. I'm figuring rain, snow, it's going to be washed away. And when we go out and we sample just the sand, that's pretty much what we find. You know, when it's like sand dune type sand where there's no organic matter, the stuff flushes right out. It's how I see it. Because KC-135 crash, they had a fuel spill, and then they had a whole dump of firefighting foam on that. And I thought we'd go out and see it in those soils. We didn't see it in the soils. We sampled all the way down right to the water table. And we know when that happened, we know there's a big plume that's coming off there, but the soils weren't there. But the first time I went out to the fire, where we first sampled it was at the fire training area. And out there, we talked about that site for 15 years, and it just so happened that they were excavating the soils out there to put in some pipes. And my consultant looked at it, and it was nice clean sand at the top, and then you got 2 foot down, and there was this black layer of the fuel that they had burned and the stuff. And so we didn't know about that, so I told my consultant at the time, well, sample that for everything, and while you're at it, see if you can find a lab that does these firefighting foams, because I didn't know what they were, but I'd heard about them. So that's where we first found it, was in a soil. But typically around here, you don't see it in the soils because there's no black stuff, there's no organic stuff, and it just flushes right through. It's like soap. But if it gets caught up in those organics, so what he's trying to explain to you was, when we look in the sand, we don't see it. But if we look in the sludge that came out of the wastewater treatment plant, there's a lot of organic material in there, and so it sticks to that. So they found some PFAS in those soils, but not a whole lot.
It depends on the type of soil it's put on, whether it does migration or not.
Yep.
How fast it migrates.
How fast it migrates, and yeah. So that's and right now, and you have to also understand we're on the sort of the cutting edge of the science. So as I'm telling you these things are, you know, we're talking at national meetings about, well, how does it really work and stuff like that. So it's not, you know, that we'll understand more in another 2 or 3 years. But so far, what we're seeing here, it seems like if there's no organic matter, it flushes through.
And the soil composition here is different than maybe some of us that live downstate.
Oh yeah.
Because, you know, my lawn has this much topsoil. If I dig down 3 inches, it's sand for 2 feet.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that the PFAS, if it finds an organic material, like the soil on top or the sludge, it's going to stay there.
Right.
But once it gets through there, it's like water through a sieve.
Yep.
It's gone.
Got right down to the water table. And then when it hits the water table, there's organic matter from the bugs and stuff that are growing on, you know, below the water table. So then it'll hang up there in the water. So.
That explains why the marsh is so cold, because of its sediment on the bottom.
Lots of organic matter there. So.
Okay, yeah, let's move on to the slide 11. Just a quick update on the drinking water sampling event.
Okay, so the Air Force is monitoring quarterly the drinking water wells. The wells that are only used for drinking water, not for irrigation, along downgrading from the former Air Force base and upgrading from the Van Eaton Lake. The Air Force put an ad on the Oscoda Press to ask any resident that have a drinking water well within the study area that we never sampled before to come and identify themselves. In 2015-2016, we sampled 54 houses. And then in 2017, early 2017, we recollected the samples to see if there's any change in the contamination or the level. And then the Air Force decided to quarterly monitor these houses. So 25 houses were identified or agreed to be included in the quarterly monitoring event. The first one we did was in July in 2018. That was the first round of sampling. We still have 3 more. We got the results validated. When we get the results from the lab, we cannot share it until a chemist looks at it. So we don't convey any false information. And as soon as it's validated, we share it with the health department and MDQ, and then we share it with the public. The results are being validated right now, but what we can tell the public that the concentrations did not significantly change. There isn't anything alarming. The Air Force requires us to contact them immediately if we find any exceedance. So we take action items, like we conduct that, we provide that bottled water to the affected individual and so on and so on. So nothing alarming happened. So for those we sample, no news is good news. As soon as we submit the report to the Air Force and MDQ and the Health Department and they approve it, we're going to share the report. As I said, it's periodic, so every 3 months we're collecting a sample. So the next sampling event is going to happen in the week of September 17th. So if there is any resident over here that we sample their house, they expect us within that week to come and collect another round of sampling. Any questions?
Are you using the same lab?
We are using the same lab for the previous event and this event, and then the next 2 events we're going to switch to another lab to be consistent with all the other sampling that the Air Force is taking at Wurtsmith. So it's the same lab that the FTO2 is sending to and the site investigations and
same testing procedures.
Yes. And the lab has to be approved by. The lab should be audited by us and approved by the Department of Defense, and MTQ doesn't have a problem with us using that lab. I mean, the results are defensible or defendable.
And nationwide, there's not that many labs that do this kind of analysis to this stage. Yeah. So, okay, moving on to the next slide. Basically, just the sort of the numbers on the groundwater pumped and treated from the 5 sites, which is FTO2, Benzene Plant, Mission Street, Arrow Street, and the landfill 3031. You know, out of that, there was 279 million gallons pumped through those 5 plants this year. 141 million gallons for the hydraulic control, and that was what went through Benzene, Arrow, and Mission. And now the Arrow and Benzene are tied to the new GAC plant, or shortly will be on the Benzene portion. And then in FY19, we'll be looking at tying in the Mission as well. So then the landfill 3031 had 138 gallons that are pumped and treated through a system there. And then FTO2, the fire training area 2, had 61 million gallons. So that was the amount removed for the year, which for that amount of water, you would think you would see more. But when we're dealing with such a minute parts per trillion. So next slide.
Matt?
Yes.
What's the treatment system in landfill 3031? I don't recall hearing about a treatment system.
There is a series of ponds there. I think it's called the groundwater treatment system. There's in fact, I think we'll go ahead and show maybe at the next RAB meeting, go into depth on that.
What does it treat for?
That one, we just have the extraction systems and what is it, the VOCs, low levels? Iron. 880. So
maybe a short tour?
Yeah, we could. As long as we don't go during hunting season, because we have an issue out there. We need to get some do not be hunting signs up out there. So yeah, good point, and we will do a presentation on it. And we do have a FY19 project in place for that. But you know, just going down through some more of the highlights for 2018. You know, and this is one of the things that we recently had discussions with the MDQ on the site SS57, talking about the air sparge operation there, and the then moving on the biotreatment system there at FTO2. And, you know, moving on to the aero and benzene, getting that in place, starting tomorrow with the aero portion, and then once we can get the rest of the water lines laid, tying in benzene as well, and then also looking into 19, tying in the mission. So, and then that just sort of goes into what one of the questions earlier to Tarek during his presentation, that last piece, the monitoring on those 5 systems. So,
hey man, I've got a question too. It seems like it's the question that comes up with everybody here too, trying to. We're on the RAB and we're trying to understand a lot of times what that means, and you know, well, we kind of have been operating long enough to know that like what pounds of PFAS means, but it's not really good information, really. You know, we're talking in parts per trillion is the conversation we'd like to continue to have, but in my opinion, and how we know effective we're being. But it's good numbers. It's good summary for 2018. I get that. But then I'm looking at, you know, we're talking about these treatment plants going into operation.
Yes, sir.
I think what would help me and everybody else here as well is if we knew, you know, what amount of plume is that pulling from, you know, what amount of groundwater is that pulling from, you know,
okay.
And to have some idea of what it is actually covering.
Okay, that's something we'll probably need to put in as an action item and put in, say, the next RAB presentation where we show that for each one of them. That way you can start to see the plume area, where our extraction wells are, something of that nature. Would that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
Matt, with going back one slide, you pumped 280 million gallons of water out of the aquifer last 2018. That's the total number of gallons, right? So 141 of them were put through a process to extract any of the PFAS, it looks like, from, so not pump and dump into the river system, but what was pumped and treated? I mean, some of the water was pumped and released into the surface water, and some of the water was pumped and treated and then released into the surface water? Is that what I'm understanding with this slide?
Yes. That some of it we were pumping and re-injecting in the hydraulic control to keep the plume from migrating.
Right. Right.
And, you know, while we're getting this new central GAC plant in place.
Correct. So,
yes, sir.
So I guess my question then would be 138 million gallons of water were pumped and treated with the result of the 2.4 pounds of PFAS and, you know, 0.49 pounds of the PFOA. But 141 million of those gallons were just dumped directly into the surface water, correct? Is that what I'm to understand? Some of it was treated and some of it wasn't.
Yes.
Is that accurate?
It was not.
Some
of it was
and
not.
there's only one treatment plant. Up until today, there's only one treatment plant that was actually taking out the PFAS.
The FTO2.
And that's what the 61
So the
million
rest of
gallons
all
is.
the other ones that you're noting here, we're just pumping and dumping them out. There was no treatment for PFAS.
Right.
So it is.
Treated could be spelled D-U-M-P-E-D.
So it's just doesn't reflect what's happening.
The landfill treatment system treats also. So it's not just
PFAS?
No.
Treats for contaminants.
Right.
Right, well, we're
That's
talking
the
about
reason we'll
PFAS with
sort of
this
show
remediation.
at the next RAB meeting for each one of the specific, especially like landfill 3031. Sort of show some pictures of that system that's there, so maybe that will help.
Okay, so the question for me then is, because I didn't pose a question, I'm just trying to get my facts straight. So what you're saying is that 61 million gallons were actually treated with the result of the poundage, and then we had 219 or 218 million gallons of water put into the surface water system, untreated, correct?
I think that's exactly what you're...
Okay, so...
Untreated for PFAS.
Correct. So my question is that through the benzene, the Arrow, and the Mission plant, you're looking to take that 61 million gallons and to be able to treat over 200 million gallons of water through the GAC system. Is that what?
No.
So I'm
The
trying to
61
understand.
million will still stay the same. That's around for the FTO2. But the 141, will be reduced, and more of that will be going through the central GAC plant. So
one pumping station is going to go through the GAC currently, and the ETA for the sewer lines, do you have an ETA for the new sewer lines?
Within 3
to
weeks.
connect benzene? I'm sorry?
Within 3 weeks.
3 weeks?
Yeah, for benzene.
Great.
Yeah.
So that's a great accomplishment that we can have. So are you planning on putting 250 million or 250,000 gallons of water per day through that plant? Are you looking to take that to 90%, 80%? I mean, what are you going to operate that plant at to be able to put these millions of gallons through
We
the
will
system?
look at the Arrow. I think it's what is pumping right now is 224 gallons per minute. Benzene is 96 gallons per minute. So we'll look at that. And also as we go through the SSI, we'll look, do we need to expand maybe with the extraction wells? Are we capturing the plumes? Is there any getting around? So, we'll look at that. And that was the thing, we're still under the 500 gallons per minute. So we're good there. And then also when we tie in Mission in 19, we'll also look at that as well. So that's one of the things you always want to make sure, and we will look, do we have enough extraction wells? Are we adequately capturing the plume to make sure there is no getting around that? So, and we'll keep you updated as we move along with that. Well, good questions. So. Okay, next slide. Okay, just going down through the number of monitoring wells which were installed this year and the vertical aquifer sampling points, the borings, and you'll hear the acronym, the VAS. And just going down through basically what our contractors have done this year. And the efforts, they've taken over 320 samples taken to date for PFOA, PFOS. So moving on to the next slide, and then just sort of a recap, the ongoing groundwater sampling. And then the monitoring program, and Sami touched on that with the quarterly sampling and starting back up sampling on the 17th of September. And hopefully you guys will be getting your validated sample results. And the installation of transducers, and that's going to be something which AMEC Wood will be doing. And then going on to the next column, the mitigation. They're working on this year's SSI field work, and they'll be preparing the report. And that's something as we move along, we work very close with the MDEQ, and we've got another BCT meeting coming up there, and that's extremely important to work very close with MDEQ throughout the process. But on the mitigation, the installing of 7 more monitoring wells, and Sami touched on that earlier when he was showing those sampling locations where we'll be putting those wells in, which 2 of them will be going on the Ratliff Park area. And those are being put in sort of a flush mount, so the people that are getting those,
very unobtrusive, so.
Matt, quick thing on the mitigation, the first point, the SSI, Supplemental Site Inspection Field Work.
Yes, sir.
If you were to guess, or maybe you know, what % of these 23 sites that we've seen as PFAS sites on the base are the SSI going to be completed in this time frame here, the end of FY19? We're talking about 30%, 40% of the site inspection
I'm going to say out of those sites, we're going to have, what would you think, 40% or more of them?
We do not have 23 sites to begin with.
No.
We have 17 sites.
17.
Some of the sites are NFA because they're not sites. That remains with around 11 sites. 11 to 12 sites. And we're working on 2, 4, 6. 6 of these sites are the most critical ones because they're immediately upgradient from the drinking water sources or the residents.
Right.
So we're working, the Air Force did phase them, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, according to the importance. So we're the most important and most critical ones are the ones that we're working on, which is the 6.
Okay.
And then the other ones are going to be phased as funding are available.
Priority is good, but of the, now you're down to 12 sites.
Don't call it the 12 because I don't have the number.
Okay,
yes.
11 or 12.
Yeah.
The SSI, you're about, by the end of FY19, you'll be 50% complete, so you can start making some decisions on remediation.
Right. I emphasize the critical, the importance.
That's
of the
priority.
Site.
I'm just trying to get a number of guesses.
If you look at the sites as numbers, I mean, there is a site far away, like the northwest side. It's not affecting anybody. I mean, if you take it as a site, I mean, you're putting money without getting immediate value.
Okay.
So, in terms
Well, when we do
of
a comprehensive list
percentage,
thing,
we're doing like 100% the most important sites, which are immediately upgrading from the residents.
And that list is available to us at immediate, at some point soon? Okay.
Sure. What about surface water?
Okay, and just moving on, the SS72, the bio wall, and then the Site 57, which we talked about earlier, the remedy, and that's something that we've been talking to MDQ about, and then the FTO2, the implementing the full scale, and we're also looking at some technology maybe to go ahead and put in resin with the GAC there at FTO2. So.
Any questions, any further questions? We'll go ahead and skip forward to
Malcolm had a
I'm
question.
sorry. I'm sorry, ma'am. Go ahead.
What's being done with the sites that aren't close to the base? Like, we live out on River Road, and that was one of the areas where there had been a fire. And so what's being done out there?
What we're looking at are the drinking water receptor mitigation areas that were impacted by mission-related activities on former Wurtsmith. So we're looking at those that were dealt with the drinking water receptors, that mitigation, and that's tied to mission-related activities. So now where are you located?
We're on River Road out by the high school.
Okay. So, which is...
There had been a fire and the foam was used.
That's, when was that? In 1995?
I think so.
No.
Well, that was when the building burned behind us.
There were 2 fires there. There was a fire in the 1980s, the fire in 1990-something. There's been an action item on our agenda for a long time on whether the Air Force would accept responsibility. I read between the lines and what you said. apparently there has been a decision that's not yet been reported to this board that the Air Force is only interested in mitigating those AFF instances where it was, in your opinion, mission-related? Is that the answer to the action item that's been in front of us for a long time, or not?
Well, right now, we're sort of in the investigation where, do you have more information on those? Because we've seen the 1984, some of those reports, and then we also saw the October 1995 report. Now, if you have more information, I
those are the two
appreciate any of those.
Those are the two incidents we're talking about.
Right, those are the two incidents. So that action item is a combined Air Force and the DEQ to give us answers to put together on that, because it's a responsibility issue that you're talking about, mission definition, and then there's the overall environmental, whoever brought the AFFF there and how it got there and why. So that's got to be a combined agency working on that. So we'll keep that action item open, but I think in the next couple of months, before the next meeting, the two agencies have got to work with us to bring a solid update in writing of what has been looked at and what needs to be looked at to bring answers to the questions that this young lady just raised. So, I mean, that's got to be brought up and answered quickly, because Bill says it's been on the list for at least 4 months.
I agree, and that's the reason I'd ask for any additional information, because, you know, the investigations thus far, you know, you started looking at the groundwater mitigation pathways from the mission activities on former Wurtsmith Air Force Base to the Oscoda school area have not been identified. So that's where we really need more information, because what we're looking at really is a mission-related activities.
So we're back to the original point that the Air Force is not accepting responsibility for the fact that they use foam out there in the 1984 fire.
That's the reason I'm asking for more information on the 84 fire, because the 95 fire was after the base was closed.
95 fire then.
So, but that's the reason it would be helpful to have more information before, you know, with the decision.
Matt, I have another question that I'll try to make this quick. Now, speaking as a planning commission member, not for Oscoda Township, from understanding what was said about the prioritizing of these plumes, if we had development in an area out by, say, the Clark's Marsh, a developer that wanted to go out there, one of the areas that is property to be developed is in that area. We're looking at expanding the growth of our community through our #1 employer at Coletta Air, and they don't have housing. So we have a whole area over there that would be very good for housing for these employees. But we have a plume that's right in that area. Would that prioritize that as a little bit better area? If we're going to have a development in there for housing, would that bring that up in the ranking?
That would certainly help with that, I'm sure. So that was one of the things I think that Aaron may have alluded to earlier about needing housing for a lot more maintenance aircraft workers.
Yes,
So,
that's right.
So, okay, yeah, please provide us with more information on that.
Well, actually, if we're going to be smart about this, the action item should be the township and the airport authority to work together to provide this board with that information. Am I right? I mean,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so let's make that an action item so we get the experts and the interested parties, stakeholders, to be part of this providing you and the DEQ and us more information. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ben. All right, let's skip forward to the public, couple slides to the public comment section. This, the RAB business, co-chairs, we decided, and so we're gonna, we'll pick that offline. So right now we have Mr. Bill Gaines.
Now, can we just have, we're actually going to have it set up a conference call of all the RAB members in the next month to go over business of running the RAB and those kind of issues and air it out, okay? But do that offline and not waste the public's time on that.
Okay, Mr. Bill Gaines.
Okay, what I'd like to talk to you about is what was alluded to earlier is the largest freshwater system in the world. 20% of the world's freshwater is represented in the Great Lakes, and the Environmental Protection Agency is charged under the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, and under that, the Great Lakes Water Quality Act. These were signed in '72, amended in '83, '87, updated in 2012, and the EPA is again updating their action plans. I think their current one ends in ends in 18, and so they're looking to go ahead from that one. The EPA coordinates those activities. Now, under the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement, there's Annex 3, which talks about chemicals of mutual concern. That's between the U.S. and Canada. And there are a number of chemicals in it, many of them the volatile organic compounds and the other things. The ones that I am specifically interested in because of this are the PFAS and PFAS-related compounds, and specifically called out in this Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement are the long-chain perfluorinated carboxylic acids, and if you've got an organic chemist in it, I'm open to an update for my pronunciation. PFOA and PFOS are specifically called out in the agreement, but as part of the long-chain perfluorinated, PFNA, PFDA, PFUNDA are included as the long-chain perfluorinated word I can't pronounce things. The ATSDR study, which was recently released, really doesn't talk about anything equivalent to health advisory levels. It talks about minimum risk levels. And so the statement is made, the order of magnitude is about an order of magnitude lower than the previous levels. I'm not sure how they combine or compare that. The only thing that the ATSDR would commit to is intermediate duration of exposures to these chemicals. That's 15 to 364 days. It's a lot shorter than lifetime, and the levels are significantly low. These are dosage levels, and they're specifically pointed at children and pregnant women. Of course, being out at the school, children really caught my attention a lot when we talked about that. Fortunately, we're getting water. The people on the other side of Van Etten Lake aren't yet. Part of this is talking about what we're discharging into surface water. When you say surface water, we're talking about Van Etten Lake, Van Etten Creek, the AuSable River, Lake Huron. Now, you can say the levels aren't very high. Man, that's a big, big swimming pool to pour chemicals in. But Wurtsmith isn't the only place that's pouring chemicals into that swimming pool. You know, Grayling essentially pours chemicals into it. The site up in Alpena is pouring chemicals into it. coming by here, we've got all the sites on western Michigan. They pour into Lake Michigan, come right on through and right down through. And guess what's out there? That's the HSRUA take-in, tested last in 2016. Downstream from that very much is Whitefish Point. Where does the water from Whitefish Point go into? That goes into the downstate communities, Bay City, Saginaw, Midland. They haven't started yelling about it because they haven't yet figured out what we in this room know about. But we need to keep talking to the EPA and have them enforce and comply with these agreements and with the continuous discharge of pollutants into 20% of the world's freshwater resources. I can't just say how important it is to get our put into that. Now, I have in writing put my point, but each of you can email the EPA, reference the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement, and ask that all of the PFAS chemicals be placed on their list of chemicals of mutual concern, particularly the ones that we begin to have scientific evidence that are, because of the minimum risk levels, really hurtful to pregnant women and children, our future. That chemicals of mutual concern is one of the things that gets updated with the next agreement, and it's the EPA's job, hopefully they will carry it out, to update that, make it make sense, bring it up to speed so that we get more and identify the PFAS chemicals that are really endangering our health. Thanks.
We have another Greg Cole. Sir?
Yeah, I'm Greg Cole. I live on Van Etten Dam Road. I'm a business owner. I got a resort there. I got a lot of things I'd like to talk about. We just received municipal water on our road, the main extension. I want to thank the township for working on a grant to get the funding for that. I want to thank Sue Aller for getting money for the service line hookups, which it looks like that'll be done in 2019. And I would like to thank the Air Force, but all these charts, all the comments you made, all the data, all the information that we talked about here tonight, and also I'll put in here, I'm a co-lead for the NOW group. We don't know if we're going to be able to record the video the next meeting because we don't get any funding. Like the Air Force has not put in any money at all to help fund for the videotaping of what we're doing right now. And I want to thank the MIC TV for keeping their costs as low as they can. The township has forked out the money so far of all the meetings that we've had. I think the Anglers of Asabo organization paid for one. The Lions Club, I know, has kind of offered possibly to pay for one. What I'm asking here is, I use this as a tool. I got into the PFAS contamination pretty heavy here the last year. Kathy and I, we got this group going, And I need this information. I'll go home tonight, I'll look at this stuff that we've talked about, all the numbers, all the data, because this is not my comfort zone. And I'm sure the people here can agree that you throw a lot of information at us at one time. So I need this to look at what the Air Force has to say and respect what the Air Force is doing, but I can't comprehend it unless I can go back to these video, to the video of what we're talking about. And personally, I'm getting tired of trying to dig up money to pay for the video and to pay for, I can tell you right now, we got friends in Alpena that's watching this, Grayling, Rockford, Parchment, Plainfield Township. Our group is in sort of a coalition with them, not yet, but we're in connection with them. They're all watching this right now. And I believe the Air Force probably looks back at this to see what happened here and get an analysis of the video. So I would just like to ask Matt to think about doing some funding for the video. Either share it with the township or share it with, or pay for the whole thing. We need to have this video.
I'll check with our PA group.
Yeah, that's something, and I'm stepping out of the facilitator, that's something that we'll have to take back, because in that, not that this is absolutely important, I see your point about going back to it and getting the information once you've been here.
Yeah.
Those are good comments, and that's something that we have to get back, because then it sets a precedence that we have to do it in other places. And again, that might be the best approach.
And while I'm here,
so it's something that
I'd like to mention the Township Hall meetings, that we've been recording them, and those need to be continually recorded, because we have all the agencies from the state and the Air Force are at the Township Hall meeting, and that's very important to look back on. And I'd like to see the costs be shared or taken over by the Air Force. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, another, just one more comment. Tony Spaniola.
I'm not Tony Spaniola. I'm Chris Coulon. I'm here speaking on behalf of Tony as a member of NOW. And he had 2 questions. Since he couldn't be here tonight, he wanted these addressed. And I would ask that you would please make this very brief, because this is way too long. Number 1, update on the status of the dispute resolution process. First thing. Number 2, any progress to stop the bleeding of PFAS contaminants into Venetton Lake? Answer. Anybody who wants to answer, but we do want to answer. And if we don't get answers here, let me tell you, we're going to get answers. And we are also not going to sit down and be quiet and just let everything happen around us. We are going to make things happen, and y'all better look out.
We will capture those as action items because they deserve official response. But yes, briefly just touch on the first one, that's part of the SSI process. And then the second one, the dispute resolution, that's the same question I've had too. Where are we at with that? So, and that's
Don't look at me, man.
Huh?
Don't look at me. They just walked out.
I think when we mentioned that, so yes, we want to.
No. It's we've had a lot of other things going on. We haven't met recently, but that's something that Kathy is working with your group to get a next meeting, next level meeting set up.
Okay.
So that should be coming
I guess the last time we had a meeting was the 19th of April.
Was it? No.
When we met down at Lansing.
Yeah.
So,
Really?
So now it goes to higher levels than us. I mean, higher levels than even before.
All right, okay.
Okay.
So,
Just one comment.
I just want to say, though, you guys are covering the issues that are at stake with us when we talk about these various things. So you're aware of the issues, you're talking about them. We have to go up the chain further.
I just want to address as a matter of fact, the fires at the school, the bus barn. You asked for that information, well, I happen to have that.
okay, great.
And this is from our fire chief. It's dated on 10/18/95. Oscoda Police Department, Fire Department was advised of a fire in the Oscoda area school bus garage located at 3550 River Road, Osable Township. The other sign was the Oscoda Fire Chief at that period of time and responded to the location. Upon arrival, it was determined that the storage shed building located at the back of the property was fully involved in flames due to the size of the building and the knowledge of that it housed various petroleum-based products, gasoline and fuel oil apparently, the other sign contacted, this is the important part I want to bring out, the Wurtsmith caretaker force with the functioning of a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, 365 a year basis. The purpose of the call was to request their large tanker, which operated with foam, as that would be the best suppressant for the fuel-based product in the building. The caretaker force arrived on location with the tanker and utilized water and foam suppressant to assist in extinguishing the fire in the building. And this is all the documentation from that. So that's the information I think you were asking for.
Yes, if you
So
can
I will
provide
give that to you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Aaron.
It also has the McDonald fire on F-41.
Okay. Well, thank you.
okay, we'll go ahead and conclude the RAB. Right before we do, the co-chairs have any further comments?
No, very good, Rab. And once again, thanks everyone that came early, went to the GAC plant today, and hopefully we can keep on having these types of successes as we move forward. The next thing will be tying Michigan and other successful things, hopefully. So, but appreciate everyone's participation.
Greg, you stole most of my thunder, but I just want on the paying for the video and everything. Thank you very much for Oscoda Township Trustee Board. Aaron was very helpful with a last-minute request on Monday afternoon by me. What we really need, no matter who comes up with the money, we need to hear from you on the benefits of this video and broadcasting. Greg said you use it as a tool. I do too. I know the Air Force does to write the minutes, but we need input because that's what will bring money. I also want to let you know that I had approached 2 months ago the Saginaw Chippewa Tribal Nation, and they're thinking about it. They've asked me to submit an application by next Tuesday or Wednesday, and so I'm going to talk to Aaron about possibly putting together a joint application for that and see where it goes. So, thank you. Last thing, evaluations. There's a written evaluation form. We get about 5 RAB meetings. Please, fill it out, send it in, scan it, do something with it. But please, we need to hear from you because RAB meetings will die and RABs will die without engagement and community involvement. So please, let us know.